I love mermaid stories. Not long ago, I went out of the way to watch a bunch of not so great horror movies about mermaids and sirens, most of which weren't so great, but I really did enjoy the Chinese film Invasion of the Mermaids that was far more than just a simple killer mermaids, kill people slasher film. Today, we're diving into a visual novel about mermaids. Well, not really. Sort of. It's more about an old mermaid folktale and how it affects a girl in the modern day. Let's dive right in. Here is my review of The Mermaid of Zennor for the Nintendo Switch. To give a bit of background on the story here, this is very loosely based around the Cornish folktale of The Mermaid of Zennor. The story was about a mermaid coming to a church disguised as a human to listen to the choir, eventually falling in love with a young man and the two disappearing together. This also exists in the game's world as a fairy tale, though with some alterations, giving more background for the mermaid, a focus on how impossible it would be for the mermaid to be able to be with the human that captivates her, and not offering the ending of the original folktale, leaving it a mystery on what actually happened to them. The story of the game is a more modern tale and centers around a young girl named Lilac, a social outcast with autism that's teased and bullied by everyone around her, from the girls on the bus and teachers to her parents that treat her and her eccentric nature as nothing but a nuisance and bother. The only people that don't treat her badly are her counselor and older half-brother Jesse, whom she is obsessively in love with, which she identifies herself with the game's version of the folktale of two people in love that can't be together. The plot here is entirely from Lilac's perspective, offering her inner monologue as she goes through days at school talking to her counselor and a surprise visit from Jesse that throws her entire world upside down. This story is very dark and dreary, emphasizing on how depressed Lilac is as a victim of bullying and just not having anyone in her life outside of Jesse that treats her like a real person. You can see early hints in the story about her deteriorating mental state with talk of her lashing out at people that speak ill of Jesse. In fact, the entire game pushes this at you both visually and audibly. Mermaid is filled with very ambient music and noise in the background as a soundtrack that has a feeling to it. I had to always keep the volume low because the sound was very oppressive, and the worse life wears Lilac down, the more intense the ambient music gets, the music itself personifying her mental state. And it was a level of discomfort I've not felt from a game's soundtrack before. But despite all of the story beats of Lilac not really being in a good mental place, and I never felt she was necessarily in the right in what she wants to do, I couldn't help but find myself empathizing with her and wanting her to have her happy ending. It's very interesting as this game doesn't feature any voice acting at all, yet I felt anxious and nerve-wracked when the big events happen halfway through that tear at Lilac's entire life, even though said events were incredibly predictable with how it was set up. The only thing I didn't like about the story is that it wasn't longer. This is only going to be a few hours and has two different endings. One of them clearly stated in the extra material was just put in there to have a more positive option than the initial ending they wrote. But I just wanted to see more of these characters. The game ends on a big decision from Lilac and it goes from said decision straight to the credits, leaving you to guess what may have happened afterwards. I understand why they ended it the way that it did, and it works, just like how they altered the folktale to not have as much of a fleshed out ending as the real one. I just wanted a little bit more. When it comes to gameplay, Mermaid is a visual novel with very light dialogue choices. As you play it, you'll progress through story scenes as you read and enjoy the story of Lilac's dreary life. This is a very basic visual novel, but it does have all of the normal functions. You can auto-advance and skip text, save and load your progress. While you can't really display the script or a log of the story scenes, it does have a back function which I find to be very useful. You can hit back to go back one statement or scene of the story in case the auto-advance goes too quickly for you and you don't finish reading before it moves on. The only other thing to note about mechanics is that you only have 6 save slots to use. That's pretty low for a visual novel, but considering this game isn't that long, I think it works out okay. Just don't do what I do and make a save every 10 to 15 minutes and you'll be fine. Speaking of length, let's dive into that. As a story, this game will only last you around 4 hours, give or take. I set the auto advance to about halfway up the setting and I got finished with both endings in just under the 4-hour mark. Granted, the endings are literally just the last 5 minutes of the game, reloading your save and doing the other dialogue choice to watch the other ending, but that's still not bad for a game that is only $6. After that, the game doesn't really offer you that much replay value, but beating the game does unlock some interesting extras. You unlock Gallery, which shows all the special event artwork, but you get Notes, which is actually a written note by the author of the story. Now let's dive into the presentation. Visually, there's not that much here. There are only a few backgrounds, and a lot of the scenes don't have the typical VN format and are just Lilac's inner dialogue on a basic background. It's very simple, but I think it works out okay. There are a few special little event or CG bits here and there, and they do look nice, as do the character renders that do show up in some scenes. It's nothing like you'd expect out of bigger VNs, so if you want a lot of visual variety, you're not going to find it here. But for what it is, as a very small indie game, I think it's okay. I have no issues with performance, so let's go right into battery life. The Mermaid of Zennor will give the original and light models a range of about 3 to 4 hours, while the V2 and OLED models get 6 to 7 hours. In conclusion, Mermaid brings more VN goodness to the Switch, though it's a rather tragic and depressing tale from start to finish. Now the downside, there's no voice acting, and the oppressive theme and soundtrack certainly will make this something that's not for everyone. But if you can get into this sort of negative vibe story, it'll be an enjoyable few hours as you walk through Lilac's journey. Reviews to Go rates the Mermaid of Zennor for the Nintendo Switch an 8 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.